Democrat of the day, though, ready to go. Alex Herring is joining us, the DFL candidate from District 9A. He is kind enough today to join us to talk about his campaign as Democrat of the day. Alex, thank you very much for the time.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for letting me have a few words.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you. I really do appreciate the time. For everyone out there, first and foremost, who exactly is Alex Herring?
I am the DFL-endorsed candidate for House District 9A, which is Southern Cass, Todd, and Wadena counties, which is up kind of in the Brainerd, Wadena, Staples area of the state.
Yeah, your staple. You've got Wadena on the far western side of your district. Staples is kind of dead center, but you've got kind of a little bit of an odd shaped district. It actually touches Interstate 94 and goes north from there.
Actually, that's where I am today. As I'm over in Alexandria, I did a tri-state manufacturing legislative forum and went through a tour over at Alexandria Tech at their machining program.
Well, very solid. Now, talk. What prompted you to say to yourself, "This year I'm running for District 9A"?
It's been a cumulative factor issue. It seemed like for a long time, as my wife and I were raising our family, politics just continued on with go and vote, and things were okay in the world. 10 years or so ago, the world kind of changed with the housing financial crisis and all the other dot-com booms or busts that started to affect us personally, and we started to pay more and more attention and to get more and more involved. The climax came a couple years ago, and it seemed like, well, we should start really showing up a lot more than just going to parades and getting involved in DFL activities. So we're interested in making a difference. We're interested in seeing affordable health care, affordable education, and affordable housing. As a general contractor, housing is very close in my world to see what's available in our area for housing, both for workforce and for retirees and for just folks looking to go to the resort capital of Minnesota, I'm going to call it, in our area. But there's also other factors like the affordability of health care and access to health care, where we don't seem to have real strong leadership in our our current legislator that represents us, or our majority. That I'd really like to see progress made with single-payer health care.
Well, if you don't mind, let's jump back to your fact that you're a general contractor, because I want to. Yeah. It's an interesting discussion point. Obviously, we're down here in the Twin Cities, so the housing is an issue. I mean, we have a lot of people that talk about, do we recycle an older building and make that work today, or is it tear down and we rebuild? But obviously, single family housing, stuff like that. When you're looking in rural Minnesota, what is the housing situation like? Is there – obviously there are some towns where I imagine there are very affordable, nice houses that you can go to. But, as we have kind of a working population that's trying to make things happen, is there enough housing in these communities for single families with the wages that are getting paid?
That's what I see as a general contractor. Some people are able to remodel as they want or build what they want. Many people in the workforce are looking just what can they afford, and what's on the market right now for affordable housing isn't necessarily something that you'd say, gosh, that's exactly where I want to live, or that's going to be an energy efficient home, or can I open these windows even?
Wow.
If the age of the house, if it needs some remodeling. And part of that housing is also with a lot of seniors aging in place, they may not upkeep homes like we think they would, basically just because they can't anymore, or it's not the top priority of their life right now with healthcare changes or things. So there's a lack of workforce housing available that people could move into to attract them. in the area.
That's got to be an interesting element of it too, because as you talk about, I mean, there's a lot of cute houses. You go out into small town America, and I do love some of the houses you can find out there, and you can find real value. But you also find, unfortunately, because these are houses from the 1910s, 1920s that have stood the test of time because they were built so kind of industrial back then. But you have asbestos issues, you got lead paint issues. When he talked about upgrades for the modern family, a lot of times a great house like that might not have a chance because the cost for a working family to really have to clean up the house because of just changes in standards is pretty expensive. I mean, imagine that does price some people out as well.
Yes, and just whether the equity is there when they're talking to the bank to come up with the funds to remodel. The bank is looking at what's the equitable value in that building. That's where there's a gap. Usually.
Once again, Democrat of the Day is District 9A. It's Alex Herring is joining us right now, running in that district. You've been doing door knocking out there. We've talked to a lot of outstate Democrats. I have to imagine you mentioned it yourself, health care. That is such a big issue, especially since, once again, Republicans promised they were going to get a fix in here. They've put them in charge. They're going to have this fixed, and we seem to be taking step after step after step backwards. Pre-existing conditions, denial of health care, either bankruptcy or death if you have anything serious happen to you. What are you hearing when you're doing the door knocking in 9A?
Well, those are all the stories I'm hearing in a nutshell that you just went through. And a big one for small businesses is whether or not they can have full-time employees, because if they have to offer health care benefits, they can't afford those employees. And the employees obviously want to work as many hours as possible. They love the benefits. But with single-payer health care, we would be able to separate health insurance from where you work. And that's actually a big factor for businesses because they're not worrying about that human resource health care premium going up every year or any all that extra time. And bankruptcy is another factor that comes up. People that have lost their savings, so when they get to retirement, they're scraping by if they're lucky, or even as a working age family, that can affect affordability of your life. If you're burning up your savings to pay for medical costs.
I've heard stories of insulin, of people basically holding off on getting insulin because it's too expensive. We had, I mean, when regardless of what people think about the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, the reality is we had some serious problems with our healthcare system, namely that pre-existing conditions, or if you were god awful sick, your options were death or bankruptcy. We are the only developed country on the planet where bankruptcy because of healthcare costs is a thing. And, I know that, Tim Walz, as he's running for governor, he wants to make that his issue, an expansion of single payer, a plan there. There is, as you talk about, there are other elements of this too, that the small businesses, the fact that they could take that, yoke off their neck and be able to basically, I got happy employees that can go see a doctor, get a flu shot for goodness sakes, without me having to look at who I lay off this week to afford it. And that's a huge deal.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, with people cutting their insulin in half or to dose themselves under what the recommendation is, we just had a friend who lost his nephew because he couldn't afford health insurance, and he was a young guy, and he actually had a common cold that got worse. And to think that someone died from a serious cold and left behind, a 9-year-old daughter and spouse is just mind-boggling when you think of how, if you lose your job, where's your health care coverage? You're thinking about getting food on the table for your family, keeping a roof over your head. So, everything is intertwined in the message.
I'm floored by that story, but if there's anything that just highlights where we have the greatest healthcare on the planet, it's accessibility. That's our problem. And it's, when someone has the common cold and we can't get them to a hospital to get basic medication and basic medical care, and they're dying of the common cold, this is 20 steps back, and that's unbelievable. That is all my best to their family as they're dealing with that tragedy. beyond healthcare, though, what are some of the other issues you're hearing as you're going door to door?
Well, the education comes into play as far as, we want our kids to do better, and we have access to like the technical schools and also four-year colleges or extended programs. It's sometimes just the cost of those. In my case, we used up a lot of the savings we had for our kids' college to try and keep our home when the housing financial crisis went through. So we were looking at loans to get us through and get our daughters through college or school. And what we found is that, it's really nice when Betsy DeVos's family can buy another yacht, but if we're paying double what the initial borrowed cost was, so those $40,000 loans are now $80,000 to pay back, that's a huge debt for our children to bear. And the fact that I'm a co-signer means that's for me to bear.
Well, and they have definitively made it tougher. I mean, if there's anything that's a sign that they are just trying to turn college education into a have, not the have-nots option, it's the way that Betsy DeVos has gone after college funding and basically said that unless you have it's coming down to unless you have the money up front, you can't go to college.
Yeah. Well,
Alex Herring once again joining us now. This is a great time of year. Have the leaves started changing up there in 9A?
Yeah, there's some rebel trees that are changing colors.
It's a great time of year. This is the point, Alex, where I say to everyone out there, okay, you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Great. If you're like me, you got a relatively safe Democrat running. Great. By all means, help your local Democrat. But if you're in a relatively safe district, we need to flip seats outstate in Minnesota. 9A, gorgeous district. As you said, vacation capital. I mean, you go up there, it's just gorgeous. And at this time of year, you get these great days where it's relatively – you still get some warmth out there, beautiful color. Imagine some apple orchards around the area, maybe a winery or a brewery or two in the area. It might be a great opportunity for a person to come on up there, do some door knocking for you, volunteering for your campaign, and then being able to enjoy the region up there while they're having a fun time on the weekend.
It is a great time to do that, and yes, I'm rooting for a flippable district here, and I have been outdoor knocking, and that's really my strategy for the next couple months is to knock a lot more doors. And if you looked at my event calendar, it's kind of full, just every day of doing stuff. like all candidates should be right now. If people do want to volunteer, my email address is basically off my website, which is Herring, HER, the number 4, MN for Minnesota, and then 9A for the district.com. So that would be the way to find me. And I also Googled myself just to make sure that I still show up in the world. So just looking for Alex Herring, HERING. I seem to pop up, which maybe I search myself too much, but I got to make sure there's no scandals at the top of the news.
Well, you go on out there, help out 9A if you can. A fantastic time of the year to get up there. It's Herring, HERING, the number 4, MN, the number 9A.com, Herring4MN9A.com. I will link to everything on the social media sites a little bit later on. If you can, once again, get out of the metro area. If you can't get out of there, make a donation. If you go to his website, you can make a donation as well. Herring, the number 4, MN9A.com. Like I said, I'll link to everything a little bit later on social media. Alex, you got it's a good district because your opponent was only elected last election. It's looking like a blue wave this time around. This is a winnable seat. 9A going to the DFL would be a huge victory. All my best in your race as we headed towards November here.
Thank you very much, Matt.